Hello there and welcome. Ryan Nordahl here, Epic Whitetail Habitat LLC. Thanks for joining me. Today, I want to talk about hinge cutting myths. There's a lot of misinformation out there that I've seen on social media lately that hinge cutting is just a big mess, it's a waste of time. But first, let me digress. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like. And as always, any of the products or tools that you see me using in this video and all my other videos, you can find links in the description below, along with a link to my website. You want to check that out. But hey, getting back to it. Myths about hinge cutting. You know, like I said before in the beginning of this video, there's a lot of misinformation out there about hinge cutting and why some of the guys on social media just absolutely hate it. And one of my biggest takeaways on it is they don't know how to manage it after the act of hinge cutting is done on their properties. And I've seen it too on a lot of client properties where they attempted hinge cutting on their own. Now let me digress again. If you've never tried hinge cutting before, or even falling a tree, completely falling a tree, don't do it. I repeat, do not attempt to hinge cut a tree or fall a tree if you've never done it before. If you feel the slightest bit of apprehension when it comes to the practice of hinge cutting, don't do it at all. Hire professionals such as myself, others in the industry that have perfected the art of hinge cutting, or loggers. And always consider logging on your property if it's feasible, and if you have viable timber for a timber sale, put money back in your pocket to help you offset the cost of a lot of the habitat improvements, and maybe even purchasing some equipment that you see along the way. But the biggest thing is, hinge cutting is a tool. It's not for every property. It's not for everyone. It's not for every property. It's a tool in the toolbox. Why do I do so much hinge cutting on my properties? It's simple. A lot of my properties, especially like on the home farm, that timber it was logged back in 2001. So we're 22 years removed from that logging project. Now, those trees are old enough where it's a barren open canopy underneath. Yes, they're small trees. The largest, on average, the largest trees are only 6 inches in diameter, 6 to 8 inches in diameter. That's true. But you can start to see forever. If it wasn't for hinge cutting, there'd be no browse, because there is no timber value on that property. There'd be absolutely no browse in there because the high canopy is shading the ground floor out. There's no regeneration. There's no hardwood regeneration. There's no forbs growing in that area. But hardwood generation is the key. It's probably the most important. It is the most important. It's the most important thing when it comes to deer nutrition and what deer relate to as far as a food source. It's so highly overlooked. We put so much emphasis on food plots and soft mass trees, hard mass trees. But when it comes to a deer, hardwood regeneration and woody browse is the most important part of a deer's diet. There's no doubt about it. They're a four-chambered stomach. They're a ruminant animal. They need that roughage from browse in their diet, in their gut, to support the bacteria, the good bacteria in their rumen, which is one of their four-chambered stomachs, is the rumen. And it's got to stay in balance. That's why you'll never see me use corn, because especially straight corn, if I were to use corn at all as an attractant where it's legal, because subacute rumen acidosis, and I have other videos on that in my channel talking about subacute rumen acidosis in deer. You'll want to thumb through my other video through my video list and check those videos out about subacute rumen acidosis, which is a very detrimental thing when it comes to deer, and it can be fatal to deer as well. But that's why woody browse is so important. And when it comes to the forests that I work with on my own properties, it's a viable tool in the toolbox, and it works great. The other thing that I see is guys go in and hinge cut, like I said in the beginning of this video, is they go in and hinge cut and then they fail to maintain that hinge cut. And yes, it does turn out to be just a thick, huge mess that deer just simply can't penetrate because it is so thick, it wasn't maintained. They didn't go back and open things up as far as creating other diversity pockets. They didn't go in and carve out the trails and stuff that lead to a specific stand location for deer, for ease of movement for the deer, to be able to bed in, to be able to move through, underneath, everything like that. And again, back to a stand location. It's a great way to funnel deer. There's, I have several locations within a hinge cut bedding area, using hinge cutting as far as travel corridors go as well, that lead to specific stand locations, specific water holes, a specific mock scrape, and incorporating even a microplot within those hinge cuttings as well to set up the perfect ambush location. A prime example is the property that I call behind my parents' house. A lot of hinge cutting done in there, bedding area, stacked along a field edge on the east side. So on the downwind side, I have a stand that I can sneak into. I've gone into those hinge cuts. I've created a hub, if you will. All these trails that come out, there's a travel corridor that comes on the downwind side, on the creek side. Bucks always travel that downwind side of that bedding area, trying to scent check those doe bedding locations within that hinge cut bedding area. They come into that microplot. I haven't killed a buck there yet, but I've had good encounters, and there's a lot of activity on the trail cameras. Coming into this year, I'm really looking forward to myself either sitting there or one of my kids or a good friend that hunts with me on my properties. I think it's going to be a slam dunk setup. Hopefully we can take a buck out of that location, but I've had a lot of good encounters. Last year was probably one of the best years that I had in that area. It's a very narrow, natural pinch to begin with that creek bottom, and the way it sets up with food to the west, bedding area, stacking those does closer to the food, and the bucks as they come back closer to the creek, especially on that cruising trail along that parallels the creek, and the bucks checking the downwind side. Sets up great, but that's where hinge cutting has been such a viable tool on that property. And you got to go back in and maintain it. Yes, it can become a mess. There's no doubt about it. I mean, from an aesthetics standpoint, I'm not here to grow trees. Yeah, I always hear about balance and stuff, but to me, my philosophy is that I buy the property to, or do I have the property to grow trees, for forest production, for income, or did I buy the land for hunting? Is the land used for hunting? Do I want to hold more deer, more wildlife, everything? I understand that there can be a balance. I get that. And no, I'm not looking to improve every square inch. I'm taking every square inch of the property into consideration, but I have to have areas that I can sneak in and out of without deer hearing, smelling, or seeing me. So I'm not hinge cutting every square inch of my property. But you have a mess of dead trees. I can save about, and it's proven, I can save roughly 60 to 70% of the trees that I hinge cut. How am I doing that? Number one, I'm opening up the canopy, which is the most important. I see so many hinge cut areas that fail simply because they didn't open up enough canopy, taking and just completely falling some of those larger undesirable trees. We're leaving the white oaks, we're leaving the red oaks, here in Wisconsin anyway. Hickory hinge cut really well. I'm hinge cutting them. I'm taking the larger ones, anything that's larger than 8 inches in diameter. I'm flush cutting them off, notching them, cutting them off, letting them fall. Now for the smaller trees that I'm attempting to hinge cut, now I have a little bit of a cushion that I can fall those trees into. And how high am I cutting? I'm cutting anywhere from knee high to about shoulder high. Those deer have to be able to crawl in and underneath. No, they're not relating to the overhead canopy, but let me digress on that. I will say that deer will relate to overhead cover in adverse weather conditions. They will. Take, for example, a giant white pine in our area. I will always, especially after significant snowfall, I will always find beds under the boughs of large white pine. So are they relating to overhead cover or just the side cover that the large trunk of the tree provides? I say both. So, but getting back, I think guys have bad experiences with hinge cutting and become to absolutely hate hinge cutting because of the mess that they allowed for it to be and didn't go back and maintain, open up travel corridors, bedding pockets, just simple lack of maintenance. I'm going in with my backpack sprayer, I'm killing out areas, I'm killing out bed locations, everything else. I'm carving them out first with a weed whacker, whatever I have, even just a simple hand scythe, cutting those weeds out, taking my weed whacker, cutting them out, and then going back in with either glyphosate or Killzall. Killzall is a great product, kill everything, and it maintains. It's like atrazine, simazine. It has a residual control. Dicamba as well. You got to watch restricted use if you're using any of those if you're considering using any of those chemicals. If they're restricted use pesticides, you have to be either privately or commercially licensed in order to purchase or handle those kind of chemicals. So glyphosate, you know, that's basically anyone, because that's why you find it on the shelves at Walmart, for crying out loud. 2,4-D is another great product that you can mix in with your glyphosate. There's a little bit of residual in that, you know, I think it's about a 2-week residual or whatever, but I'm not a chemistry major, so I'm not here to talk about that. But that's why hinge cuttings fail. But it is a viable tool and I love it. It has to be done right. Leave it to professionals. If you have any apprehension whatsoever, contact myself, contact other professionals in the industry, contact a logger. Logger is always number one because you could have some viable timber on your property. Cutting the right species of trees, guys. You know, that's another failure as well. Guys just simply aren't cutting the right trees and they're falling over and dying. I get it. They don't have the proper tools and equipment to push or pull over those trees, like a habitat hook, one of the simplest tools there is, one of the greatest tools there is. I'm not here to promote habitat hook because I'm not paid for by them. I don't want that. But it's a product and tool that I use. I absolutely love it. It's helped me create successful hinge cuts. And hey guys, hinge cutting is a great tool when used in the right situation. It's not for every property. I'll be one of the first to admit that. You hear other guys admit it as well. But you want to check it out, and that's why it is not hinge cutting does not have to be a disaster. Wind's picking up. I'm feeling great. It's a great, cool day here in the middle of August. I hope you guys are getting your habitat projects wrapped up, getting your food plots, fall food plot projects implemented and wrapped up. I'm getting excited for deer hunting coming along. We're about a month away here in Wisconsin. I'm sure it is, you know, whenever it starts for you guys, hey, good luck with all your projects as you wrap up in preparation. Hope you're out shooting your bows, shooting your crossbows, getting your guns sighted in. It's an exciting time of year, and I'm really looking forward to it. Keep living the dream, guys. God bless you all.